Good afternoon. I'd like to welcome everyone to today's webinar event. My name is Joshua. I'm going to be your presenter today. Hopefully everybody can hear me okay. We're here to talk about payroll tax forms today, and really the two tax forms that we're going to be discussing are our quarterly 941 form and our W-2s. Certainly Church Windows Payroll does include other tax forms. We'll probably make a note of a couple of those in passing, but the two that we're going to be focusing on pretty much exclusively today are our 941 report and our 941 form and our W-2s. Before we get started on those, a couple things. We'll be here till 20 minutes after the hour. I will try to do my best to keep within that time frame. Within that allotted time, if you have questions, please type those into the questions portion of the webinar control panel. I'll do my best to keep an eye on those and see what I can't do to get those answered. I may not be able to get to answering those until the very end of the webinar. If you can stick around, I'll certainly be happy to answer any additional questions you have. Please keep the questions on topic, meaning about our payroll tax forms that we're discussing today. If you have other questions about other portions of Church Windows, either contact our support staff at 800-533-5227 or you can email us, or there may even be another webinar event in future that will be is set up and designed to answer questions you have about that particular part of the software. We do try to follow along with the workbooks as much as possible, so our topic today is taken from P102, Payroll 102 workbooks, pages 28 to 33. If you have those workbooks, then by all means you can, that's what I'm using as the guide for today's webinar event. Or if you don't have the workbooks, you can certainly go onto our website and purchase those. Those are very helpful. We do try to keep the webinars, in keeping with those workbooks as much as possible. With a few exceptions, we pretty much do keep with those. We are recording today's event. It will be made available on the Support Center page on our website here within the next week or 10 days, so you can revisit this. So if you have to dart out or something or duck out before catching the end of the event, you can catch the watch or review the entire video of this event here in another week or two. Okay? All right. So as we're turning to page, or have 28 on there, and we're talking about our quarterly 941 form, you can, of course, these are all forms that you can produce from the Church Windows Payroll module. So when we go to, say, our reports, tax reports, we see one here called quarterly 941 form. When we click on that, it opens up our 941 tax report wizard or report wizard. A few things about this particular page. It's always going to default to the quarter or the reporting quarter that best matches the actual quarter that is on your computer. So in this case, because we're on, still in the first quarter, January through March 2019, it's defaulting to the first reporting quarter here when we come in there. Once we roll into the second quarter, it'll default to the second quarter, etc. Okay? You must, of course, ensure that you're choosing the proper deposit schedule. Okay? This is, virtually every church is required to submit either a 941 or a 944, most commonly 941. We do have the 944 as well, but it's not very typical that is required to be submitted by many churches. So choose your appropriate deposit schedule. It's either going to be semi-weekly, monthly, or quarterly. These are how often your deposits, your tax, federal 941 tax deposits are made with EFTPS. If you are unsure as to your deposit schedule, contact the IRS with your EIN number and they'll be happy to let you know. Okay? Most commonly is monthly. Some churches are semi-weekly and some are quarterly, but in our experience, or my experience I might add, it is most churches, the highest percentage of churches are monthly. That's when you're obligated to make those tax deposits. The form, of course, is only submitted quarterly. Choose your appropriate deposit state. So we are, of course, in Ohio. That's one we have set in our payroll module, but yours should default to whatever you have as your default withholding state in your employee or in your data setup or your system profile in payroll. Adjustment for group term life insurance. Typically, this isn't populated. On rare occasions it is, but it's for basically employers that don't gross up the group term life taxes. We do have an option for calculating group term life taxes in the software. We're not here to talk about that. So again, this is very, very, very rarely used, but if you do, you enter it here. Okay. Once we've entered that chosen the appropriate information here, we would simply go to next. The form number 941-2, and what I'm referring to here is that right up here it says form 941. This is a wizard. Each one of these screens is numbered, okay? But essentially this is for any third-party designee filing information or third-party designee information, okay? Basically, it's this only be used if another person is preparing your taxes for you, for example, like a payroll service, okay? So yes, basically if you're wanting to authorize the third-party work or deal with or speak with the IRS on your behalf, you would change that to yes. Otherwise, you'll want to leave it set to no, okay? And then of course you'd enter that name, phone number, and any 5-digit PIN if applicable. We don't have any of that information. You can of course save that as the default, but typically again I don't see this populated very much. Clicking next. It opens up and asks us to enter, do we want to include any paid preparer information for your 941 filing? Again, if there is basically a paid preparer that's preparing this might be for an accountant with a tax agency that's preparing the tax information for you. Otherwise, this information will be left blank, as it will be for our webinar today, okay? Again, it can be entered. It's optional. It's not required in most or many cases, okay? Again, you can save them as the default so it populates each and every time. But we're going to simply click next. And what it does then is it pops up as the photo does or the screenshot does at the bottom of page 29. It pops up and asks us the question, or says the question is the total of deposits for this period is, it presents us the amount and asks us the question, is this amount correct? Okay. So this is an important amount, folks, because this is the amount that payroll had deducted from or withheld and subsequently matched for your 941 taxes for the quarter. So typically, unless we have a reason to believe that this amount or we know that this amount is wrong, we are typically going to answer yes to this, okay? This amount is the actual amount of the physical deposits that were made based on your deposit schedule. So if your deposit schedule is monthly, now keep in mind, again, we're only 2 months into the 3-month quarter, so this amount is not really complete for us either. But again, when you're getting to the, filing the form at the end of the first quarter or at the end of any quarter, again, this is the amount of the total amount of all of my, say, 3 months deposits that I had made through EFTPS throughout the quarter, throughout the period of that quarter, okay? So again, unless I'm going to know differently, I'm typically always going to answer yes to that. Okay? If, for any reason, you deposited a different amount than this, physically deposited with EFTPS, an amount that's higher or lower, you're going to click no to that, and it's going to pop up and ask you, okay, enter the correct amount here. Again, this is the amount that you physically deposited. So if you deposited more than the amount that was recorded here, then what's going to happen is it's going to detect that there was an overpayment detected. If you enter an amount here that's lower than the amount that's above, again, it's going to detect that you've underpaid, and it's going to then say, here's how much you still owe, and you need to deposit. So again, the system is very smart in terms of knowing, where you stand regarding those deposits based on how your actual deposits physically occurred, okay? But in this case, we're going to just go ahead and click yes through that. And then what it does is, because again, my assumption is that unless I know differently, I've trusted that payroll is withholding the amounts of taxes correctly. I'm depositing them accordingly during the period. Therefore, that amount should match each and every time. Okay. So now it opens up our pre-completed 941 form. So now I know folks might be feverishly typing in some questions here. Okay. First of all, this says 941 form for 2018. Okay. So before everyone rushes in there to say, hey, why does your form show 2018? It's very important. We are not at the end of the first quarter of 2019 yet, okay? We are just about ready to get the 941 form for 2019 from the government now. We release a payroll update at the end of every quarter, at the end of the first quarter of every year that most notably updates the 941 form to the current year, okay? So we don't even have the 941 form written into our software yet. That will come out in the patch that we release at the end of March, next month, okay? So the only form it has in the system right now is the form for 2018. Perhaps you're still submitting or filing your final form for the prior year anyway. Many churches and users are, so we can't install that or have that overwrite the previous year's form too soon, okay? So just an FYI, the form for 2019 is not written into the software yet. That is coming, okay? But this is a completely printable and fileable form. Pre-completes it with all of your information in payroll, the reporting period, all of the form's information, and again, depending on your deposit schedule, you might have 1 page, 2 pages, or 3 pages. If you file quarterly, it'll be on all one page. If you file monthly, it'll be on 2 with a breakdown for each month on the second page. And if you file semi-weekly, then you'll have a 3rd page that will show a breakdown for each deposit during the month. Okay? You can then complete and submit this form. All right? Very nice and handy to be able to get a completed 941 form from the system. If we go to reports and back into tax reports, again, while rare, if some churches, if you're a church that does submit or file your tax deposit annually, you will choose the 944 form. Then those are for only churches, though, that are required to file their tax deposits or submit their tax deposits with the IRS once a year at the end of the year. Okay, we're not even going to go over that today. Okay, it's that rare. Okay. All right, so we're a little more than halfway through our webinar event. Let's move on to our W-2s. So if we go back to reports and W-2s now, the first and foremost important thing to keep in mind about the W-2s, of course, is, you know, here we are in our payroll 2019, right here, payroll version 2019 SR1. So my forms for W-2s will only now be for 18 because I have the new payroll version installed. If I did not have payroll version 2019 installed, I only had 18, my W-2 forms would still say 2017 on them. So the only way you'll be able to get the previous year's form is by installing the next year's payroll update, okay? So in order to be able to produce our forms, so we're going to change our year back. So because we're in 2019, I have to go to System Administration, System Profile. I have to now roll my year back to 2018, click OK. Now when I run my W-2 forms, they will be for the 2018 payroll year, okay? So then similarly, we would go to Reports, Tax Reports, W-2 forms. It will list all of my employees that it detects are eligible to receive a W-2. In this case, we're just going to look at one. So we're going to clear all and choose just Jimmy. If there were anybody that had an invalid Social Security number, it would tell us, okay? Then we, but of course we typically will check them for all folks who are warranting receiving one, but we're just going to look at one today, okay? So then we're going to, once we check the employees, we're going to go to Next. So here now then, it defaults to our file copy, which is basically just a working copy of the W-2. It's not a copy that you will submit, either with your your 941 or your W-3 information or what have you. This is just an internal working copy. So when we click Next, it is just, again, it's just a copy or employer copy D of the black and white for 2018. This is just for your record keeping purposes or working copy, okay? But it does print out an actual wage and tax statement, okay? When you're ready to actually print the actual physical W-2s for your employees, you will go back here and down the left-hand side, you'll change it from file copy down to government copy. Okay, hopefully everybody can see that right here on the left-hand side. Okay, so let me get rid of that drawing there and we'll make that selection. So once we've chosen our copy type, government copy, we now then have to choose our document style. Are we printing a standard IRS format, the one where we actually need to get the forms from the IRS? Or are we going to be getting one of the pre-purchased forms from like our local office supply store in the form of a 4-up form? Or more commonly, are we going to be printing our black and white format to plain paper using a laser or copier printer? Okay. Each one of them are different. The standard IRS format, let me get rid of my drawings here. Standard IRS format, like I said, does require that you get the forms from the government. The standard IRS form, well, let's go to next. So when we look at that, notice it's just populating with all of the, amounts and fields and everything else in there. Because again, the form comes pre-printed with the lines on it. Okay. The 4-up is basically one employee per page, one in each corner. So typically then how that form is it's a little separated right here. So there's one in each corner. And so you've got, employees copy up here and then federal copy and then state, et cetera, and local one in each corner essentially. Okay. But the most common forms that folks are using these days is our black and white copy. So once we change down to black and white, again, you cannot print, the government won't accept W-2s that are printed in the black and white format when printed to, say, an inkjet printer. You must use a laser printer or a copier printer in order to produce those, but they can be printed to plain paper, okay? So each one of these needs to be printed and perhaps cut and perhaps collated manually by you. So, here we would choose the copy A to be submitted with our W-3 to the Social Security Administration. So I would choose that copy and then go to next. Again, this would be, again, a hard copy I would submit unless I'm doing my online filing. Notice here it says do not cut or fold forms on this page. Again, they don't want these cut, okay, because again, it's all going to the SSA. Then I would close out and go back, and I would choose copy B, which is, again, the federal copy. So again, it's to be filed with the employee's federal tax return. This one I can cut. So I've got 2 employees per page. So I'd print that. Then I'd go back, and then I'd choose the employee copy. Basically for their records, that includes the instructions. That would be 1 employee per page. And again, printing all of the rest as needed, and then again, manually cutting and collating those and distributing them. And it also does give you the option to choose whether you want to show the full Social Security number or partial. Again, I can't answer as to what the legalities are on that, folks. I just know that it is an option for you, okay? But again, black and white format has been accepted by the IRS for a number of years, provided you're, again, printing them in plain paper and printing them on an actual laser or copier printer. It's just a printing quality issue, folks. That's the reason why they require that, okay? And finally, on the bottom of page 33 here, it does talk about, note if you need to make corrections to like previously filed, 941s or W-2s, you, of course, do have the amended forms here. So if we come down here, we've got our 941X, W-2C, W-3C. Only required if you need to submit or file an amendment to a previously submitted or filed forms. But just, to let you know that those amended forms can be printed from the software, and you can manually complete those and send those in. All right, so that is our topic for today. Let me see what questions we've got out here. I'm being asked, we only started using Church Windows Payroll this month. Prior, we were using Church Windows Accounting. how do we get the correct amount without re-entering in payroll since it's already in accounting? Maybe I'm not sure I'm understanding the question, of course, LaShonda, but frankly, if you can go ahead and key in the paychecks into the payroll system and just delete them from the transfer to accounting window. Nothing says you have to transfer them into accounting. But definitely, just for practice purposes, I would go in and I would record, January and early February paychecks in the payroll system just to get familiar with it and just not transfer them into accounting. If I'm understanding the question, maybe I think that's what you need to do. I don't see any other questions. Perhaps folks are typing those in. There's more. All right, so is there an option to print all W-2s for one employee all at once rather than going into each report separately and cutting them apart? Debbie, no. You have to print each one of the forms separately because, again, they are actual separate forms with different copy letters. That's not how it, or copy identifiers, form identifiers on them. So no, they can only be done separate by form. Yeah, I'm sorry. Good questions. You're very welcome, of course. Let's see here. Maybe give some folks there. Okay, another question. We do not have to use the pink copy for IRS anymore. That is correct. Again, the black and white format has been accepted by the IRS for a number of years. There is no requirement to use either the 4-up or the standard IRS format any longer. Again, as long as you're printing them to a laser or copier printer. Good question, too. All right, I'm not seeing any other questions coming in. Again, folks, if something occurs with questions after the webinar has concluded, if you have questions, please don't hesitate to call us, myself included, 800-533-5227. I will go ahead and end the webinar for everyone, and we hope to see folks at another future Church Windows webinar event. We hope this has been helpful. All right, I hope everybody has a great day. Take care. Talk to you soon. Bye-bye.